So, what he said. Thank you very much. So, it's listening to Tomasz and Brenda. This is actually perfect timing for what I'll talk to you about, because you've just heard about some very cool tools and some applications that are impacting marketing. And what I want to do is share some stories about what I'm seeing in the market. So my background, I'm the Chief Marketing Officer for IBM across Central and Eastern Europe. So that's about 29 countries, and it is very much about the brand that varies in every country in the way people look at IBM for my day job. But what I want to share with you is, as a marketer and as your marketers, how might what we're seeing in the field and what's exploding around us, how is that affecting your day job? And what am I starting to see? So, as any good marketer, and as Brendan mentioned, data is so important, let me start with some data. So there's a group inside IBM. We refer to it as the Institute for Business Value, and think of it as a think tank. So we bring some of the best and brightest that are working out in the field, and we rotate them into this center, and they do proprietary research. And one of the things we do every 2 years is what we call the C-suite study. And we go out around the world and we interview in person. This is not an online survey. It takes about an hour. I interviewed the CMO of Energizer batteries the other day. And we get a sense of what's keeping them up at night. What are they worried about? What trends are they spotting? How are they interacting with their peers and the rest of the board of directors? And what are they doing about it to take advantage of opportunities? So we talk to CEOs, CIOs, chief financial officers, heads of HR, chief marketing officers, operation officers. So about 4,200 around the world. We're doing our next study right now. We're in market with it. But this last one that just came out last year, some interesting insights. So one of the questions that we had asked was, when you look at the potential influencers on the strategy for your business, who are the big influencers? So no surprise, if you think about it, their own peers, right? The CEO, the CFO, and so forth, big impact, because they are providing the direction for the company. But what was surprising was number two, right? The customer. So in a sense, what they're saying is, every time we meet as a company, there's a chair, it's usually an empty chair, and it's reserved for the chief executive customer. And they're now realizing the power of what customers have. Now, all of you being socially savvy, why do you think that's happened? There's been a power shift, right? In terms of the old way of marketing, corporate communications, the things that we're able to drive as marketers, is now being drowned out by the social sphere. Right? And the power that can happen. So, quick question. Are you all familiar with the brand UGG shoes? Probably most of the women in the room, right? They're starting to make men's shoes, but mostly women. And so my daughter, she's 16, and so she's very familiar with the brand and has many of them. So a few years ago, there was a tank in their sales. I mean, just literally from day one to day two dropped. And they're thinking, what's going on? Did our suppliers dry up? Did a ship not make it, over, for the inventory? I mean, what? It came down, interesting, speaking of Twitter, to a tweet. Actually, one tweet. So think about the demographic. Teenage, 20-something, mostly female. Who might be that one person that could influence that big of an audience with one tweet? Anyone? Celebrity. I'll give you a tip. Keep going. Justin Bieber. Justin Bieber tweeted, "Girls who wear Uggs are ugly." That was it, right? And then, well, I'm not going to wear those, right? So if you think about the power of consumers, right? Now, I'm pretty sure that the executives at UGG were not waking up this morning going, I wonder what Justin's up today, right? But it's that kind of shift. So you can understand why this is so important. So if you think about that, and you start thinking about, so who's set up for this? So in the same survey that we did, we asked, are you set up to listen? And about 46% would say, yeah, we've got it. But double that would say, if we don't figure out how to do this in the next 3 to 5 years, we're dead. Because we're not doing anything in terms of listening and understanding the data that's coming in. So another question. How many of you offer up, pretty much for free, personal information about yourself every day to customers? To suppliers. Okay, well, not that many people. Okay, let me ask you another question. How many of you have credit cards? Okay, you're all doing that, okay, whether you realize it or not. Every purchase that you make on a credit card, wherever you make that purchase, that's all data that's being flowing back into your bank. Now, whether they're doing anything with it or not, that's up to them, but you are offering them information. Now, ideally, there should be an exchange of value, right? You should get something for that because you're sharing something personal. So if you do the stats, 90% of the general population is willing to say, I will give you information about myself, but I would like some exchange of value. It could be a frequent buyer card, get every fifth cup of coffee for free, something like that. Then I'm willing to give you my buying patterns and where I buy and what I like. The problem is only 32% of these organizations around the world are listening and are doing anything about taking advantage of that data and turning it into value for their customers. So what does that mean for marketing? If you talk to their marketing departments and you say, so how are you starting to bridge this? Okay, most companies have some type of traditional marketing engine, right? They're doing events, they're doing traditional advertising, but they're now starting to shift to digital. And the challenge is, how do you marry the two? How do you really make an engaging customer experience and use, as Brenda was just talking about, television experience? How can you integrate additional technology to make it even more engaging and heighten the awareness and the enjoyment of the event? Now, it's interesting that if you look at the data, about a third would say, we don't have a strategy for that yet. Another third say, well, we're working on it. And the last third would say, we're getting our heads around this and we're making some progress. But that's a lot of work to do for us as marketers, but it's a tremendous opportunity to actually add value to our companies and actually create value for the customers we're trying to reach. So let me give you 4 points of what I'm seeing in terms of major trends. The first one is data. Now, treat data like the new natural resource. Okay, so let me give you an example. So if you go back to the 18th century, it was steam. 19th century, electricity. 20th century, fossil fuels. 21st century, it's data. Nice thing is it's green and it's completely regenerating. But it is limitless. Okay? But what can you do with it? Let me give you one example. We're working with a bank that has a call center, like most other banks. Now, imagine matching psychographic data, okay, and psycholinguistics. So take deep analytics and start to analyze not just the customers that are calling in, but do it on your own call center representatives. Why would you do that? Well, think of online dating. No, stay with me here because you're thinking online dating and banking, what's going on? Imagine if you've got a high-profile customer and they have a very specific kind of way of holding themselves. In terms of they're boisterous, they've got a big ego, they love sports, they're very outdoorsy. Well, wouldn't it be great is when they call in and they're looking for some financial advice from the bank, that you match them with someone that has very similar way of approaching life? Don't you think that maybe that connection is going to be a little bit easier in terms of over the phone and developing a relationship with that end customer? Yeah. So what they're doing is they're basically matching the profiles of the customers as they call into the center with the people that work in the center, so they actually share other interests other than the fact that one works at a bank and the other one needs some services. And they're starting to see higher cross-sell and upsell because there's more of a connection being made in that conversation. So take it one step further. So Tomasz was talking about scale. So that's a physical limitation. How many people can you have in a call center? Well, imagine if you could automate this. So have any of you heard of the technology we developed? We call Watson. Maybe Watson? Okay, so it's been around. Okay, so think of it as basically the next wave of what we would call cognitive computing. So in this example, you've got Melissa, okay? She's calling in, and she's on her phone. So she's now text into her bank. So she's registered, and she has just a quick question. She wants to know how much she should start saving for her daughter to go to college. Very open-ended question. Well, what Watson can do in a matter of seconds is Watson can start going through bank articles, forum posts, call logs, policy documents, product briefs, thousands of them in a matter of seconds. The other benefit is because she logged in, it also knows some personal information. So it knows that she's from Texas, and that's makes an impact in the United States because the kinds of schools that you might go to, state-funded versus private universities. They know she has a 2-year-old daughter because it's part of the profile because she had opened up an account for her daughter on her birthday. So then it can immediately respond back that by the time she will go to college in 2030, here's how much it'll cost you roughly to go to a state school, and here's how much it'll cost you to go to a private school. Now, the sticker shock, yeah, I know, it's really expensive to go to college in the United States. But the point is, that is a very different kind of way to scale customer service. And there's no human touch here, right? Because it understands the text that you're driving in. So think of this as lesson 1. What could you be doing more with the data that you have? That old adage of if we only knew what we knew. Well, chances are you've got some really interesting insights in the customer data you've collected, maybe even by accident, but haven't necessarily turned it into something you can turn into value. Second idea. This is about extending the physical and the digital. So here's an interesting story with Jaguar Land Rover. So as you might imagine, when somebody, speaking of cars, when somebody is interested in buying a car, when they actually do a test drive, the chances of them actually buying that car start to really go up, double and triple. But what's the problem? The problem is physics, is you can't have a showroom for Jaguar Land Rover in every town in every country around the world. So what do you do when you're trying to sell a car when the car is not there? Well, what you do is you create a virtual showroom. So this is my car. Let me explain. That's not my car. That's my virtual car. I've not purchased this car. But what they've been able to create is basically a virtual showroom where I can lift the hood, I can design the engine, I can decide what I want and modify it, I can pick the steering wheel, I can change the leather in the seats, I can play with the color, I can put a spoiler on the back, and it all gets saved. So every time I go back, they keep presenting me with my dream car. Like they're wearing me down, oh, by the way, there's financing involved and so forth. And at the same time, they're picking the trends. What are the features that they could add to any of their cars that seem to be trending more? And they need to make sure that they are now stocked to be able to deliver those kinds of custom-built cars. So they're basically just short of me sitting into these leather seats and taking it out for a test drive. And I may actually get to the point where, you just order the car, custom order it, and it gets delivered to me. But this is a very interesting way to say, look, we are not going to be bound by the limitation of where we have showrooms. We have the ability to create a unique experience, and we can extend it at scale. Third thought, Wimbledon. All familiar with Wimbledon? It's a tennis tournament? Okay, so this is an interesting one because Wimbledon, you would say, doesn't have a business problem. So if you think about it, 50 weeks out of every year, they're a sleepy, very private, very quiet lawn tennis club, very exclusive. But for 2 weeks out of the year, they become the center of the sporting world. 500,000 people go through the turnstiles. 800 million people tune in over 200 countries around the world. You'd think, so what's the problem? I mean, they're not going to cram anybody else in there. They're selling out. So the question is, how do you enhance the customer experience with digital? So how many of you, on a regular basis, have what we call the second screen? When you're watching something, you've got laptop open, your phone, your tab. Okay, right. So how do you make that even more engaging, especially at a sporting event? So what you do is you create that kind of experience. You've got the Slam Tracker. You can track every single shot in every single match live, the speeds, the scores, no matter what court you're watching in or whether you're watching at home. You've got the ability, if you were actually sitting in the stands, you could hold your phone up and it'll give kind of an infrastructure, X-ray view of the stadium that you're in. Because right now you're thinking, I could use a hot dog, I could use a beer, and I could use a bathroom. So where's the bathroom? I don't want to walk all the way around this way to realize that it's right over here, but I can do this and go, oh, yeah, there's the bathroom. Oh, by the way, and there I can get some beer right over there. That'll be perfect. I won't mention any more of the match. So these are things that are trying to extend the experience and make it even more engaging. They're not benchmarking themselves against Roland Garros or the US Open. They're benchmarking themselves against the best sporting experience anywhere. And that's how they should measure themselves. Frankly, that's how every marketer should measure themselves. Your competition is not the people in your industry. Your competition is anybody who delivers an amazing customer experience because they will bring that to your engagement. And the question is, will you delight them or will you disappoint them? Last one, This is about leveraging social networks. Now, not in the traditional sense in this example. This is a really interesting story. So Boston's Children's Hospital, they are renowned for understanding pediatric care and how to save children's lives. And the interesting thing is, a child is not like a small adult. You don't just cut all the dosages in half. I mean, it's really, really different. And it's a skill. But the problem is every single year, 7 million children under the age of 5 die. And they die from very treatable illnesses like diarrhea, like malaria, pneumonia. These are very treatable. The problem is they are in far reaches in different countries, in developing countries, and they don't have access to care, and the nurses and doctors don't necessarily have the latest techniques on how to save their lives. So we work with them to create a very private, very purposeful network called Open Pediatrics. And what we do is we have doctors that are certified and registered to weigh in. And this is using game theory, this is using video, this is using simulations and demos, chat rooms, tagging. And in a sense, what they're doing is delivering virtual training in the cloud or on a device you could download and then replicate to understand things like how to use a defibrillator in the field, or how to take a Coke bottle, a plastic bag, and a tube and intubate a child to help if their throat's closing from pneumonia so they can survive the night and then the next day get the treatment that they need. So this is saving lives, but it's using the same technology that all of us have access to, but it's combining very special pieces with a very specific audience, the medical community, and it's changing the way that we're delivering medicine and training around the world. So, in summary, think about the challenges that we all face as marketers. Okay, and it comes down to questions you need to ask yourself. First being, what am I doing with the data that I have access to? Is there data that I'm missing? Is there something I could do to entice more information from my customers in exchange for value? Then once I have that value, have I thought about my physical and my digital engagements with my customers? Am I starting to merge the two? They should not be two separate strategies. Then you start thinking about the way to enhance any of those experiences with other digital capabilities. So you benchmark yourself against the best in the industry, not just your competition. And then finally, are there pockets of that community, that customer set you're trying to reach, that you could rally around very specific, purposeful missions? All right, I gave you a case related to medicine, but you could extrapolate that to anything in the market. You have these tools as marketers. And the challenge is, are you taking these tools and figuring out ways to not only delight your own bosses and your CEOs, because we all fight for our marketing dollars every quarter. How do you help justify that? But at the end of the day, are you using it to create really differentiated customer experiences? Thank you for your time today.